Good morning. I am Benji and I'm a Year 10 student at Christ College. Today I'm going to be talking about why there is such a drinking culture in New Zealand. The reason I've decided to do this topic is because I've noticed that New Zealanders drink a lot more alcohol than other countries overseas like Australia. On this topic, I've interviewed Andrew Galloway, who works at the Alcohol Health Watch, and have interviewed New Zealand police media to get their thoughts on this topic.
So the first question I've got is, why is drinking such a culture in New Zealand?
Well, that's a really good question, and there's not one easy answer, Benji, but certainly some of the academic research links it back to the way we've colonized New Zealand. We've come mostly from the Captain Cook era, and some researchers have said everywhere Captain Cook went, he took with him a similar drinking culture. So, Australia being our closest cousins. Certainly, one of the reasons we maintain a really bad or harmful drinking culture is some of the big policy things: price, availability, how available it is, and how it's marketed, advertised, and it's everywhere. It's when we celebrate, it's when we commiserate, and it's when we play sport. It's a big part of New Zealand's fabric. So that really just reinforces our problematic drinking culture.
And my second question is, are New Zealanders binge drinking?
Yeah, certainly. And look, for young people, there's been a really positive shift in that less young people are drinking hazardously, but certainly there's enough young people still drinking hazardously that it causes us concern. That the reduction in consumption generally is good. More young people are choosing to drink less, and more people are drinking less hazardously across the whole population. That said, there's still some really problematic drinking. So it used to be 4 out of 5 New Zealanders who had a hazardous relationship with alcohol, and 1 in 6, but that's still a huge amount of people in New Zealand.
All right. My third one is there pressure in New Zealand for like the social to drink alcohol, and are we conditioned from an early age to become drinkers?
Like I was saying, I think more young people are choosing to drink later. So I think young people are leading the change in the way that people drink. The evidence is really clear that the later someone starts drinking, the better chances they have of not becoming a dependent or hazardous drinker. The earlier, on the other hand, the more chance you have of becoming a problematic drinker. Yeah, so social kind of pressure or peer pressure. Yeah, look, there is. And many people who have chosen not to drink say that they find it harder to go to social events because people, and it's changing, but still a lot of New Zealanders will, when you say, look, I'm not drinking, they'll go, there's something wrong. When actually not drinking is a completely legitimate thing to do. And especially given the growing body of evidence that there's no safe limit of alcohol, more and more people are choosing not to drink. We've seen a huge increase in low alcohol and non-alcoholic beverages, so people can still get a beer which is completely zero alcohol and feel like they're part of it. So that actually shows you that there still is some social pressure to drink.
Is there a model country that has healthy drinking culture that doesn't have binge?
That's another really good question, Benji, and there's not one country who has it perfect, but I can say that I really like what Canada are doing. They have a government monopoly on the sale of alcohol in a retail sense. So you can only buy it from a government retail store, which means they control the price and availability. The short answer is no. There's not one country who's done it perfectly because we're still dealing with a big commercial industry. So industry across the world, it's called the commercial determinants of health, and they are responsible, if you like, for maintaining a really permissive alcohol policy in countries around the world. And so what you see is very similar in different countries. You see in the Northern Hemisphere, Scotland have introduced some good pricing controls, or minimum pricing, for example, which puts the price of alcohol up slightly, which we know reduces the demand. And in Ireland, they've just put in warning labels, but they always come with this challenge because the industry is so good at fighting things that they know are going to ultimately reduce the amount people drink because that hurts their profits. So, yeah, good question, but the answer is to my knowledge, I don't think there is one country who's perfect, but what we know is that different parts of the world and parts of Australia have minimum price. So it's different by state in Australia. That's how difficult it is to pass good policy. Is often it's down to a very regional level. Yeah, there's bits of it we'd love to take from everywhere, but there's no one that's doing it quite perfectly, and that really does come down to the power of the alcohol industry and opposing positive change in policy.
Alcohol is one of the drivers of demand for police and is linked to the other drivers of demand, rangatata, whānau, roads, mental health and organised crime and drugs. Because alcohol can fuel a number of unsafe behaviours, it is often a significant factor in many of the incidents frontline police officers respond to every day. Police record this activity through a contributing factor flag, which is used to inform police of the prevalence of harm from alcohol in our communities. While there are a select number of alcohol prevention officers in each district, it is not just the responsibility of these officers to help prevent alcohol-related harm. This falls on everyone. While rotation of sergeants through the alcohol prevention role provides valuable experience to officers in district and across the organisation, police note the concerns raised, and we are working to address these in a new action plan currently being drafted. Police work closely with our partner agencies, the medical officers of licensing inspectors, in a tri-agency approach to alcohol harm prevention and administration of the Act. This is mandated under the Sale and Supply of Alcohol Act 2012, the Act, and is a responsibility police take seriously. Together we aim to reduce the harms from alcohol in our vulnerable communities that are represented by Māori and Pacifica. Alcohol harm prevention encompasses a whole of police approach, which includes enforcement of alcohol bans, conducting compliance checks of licensed premises, policing large-scale events where alcohol is served, such as sports events or concerts.
Good morning. My name is Freddie Parfit and I'm a Year 10 student at Christ College. My investigative topic was what do teachers think of the phone ban and what do they think of teens on social media. Throughout my journey, I've interviewed Alex Lascelles, Tony Bukaski and Executive Principal Garth Wynn on their opinions.
The second school term began on the 29th of April and so did the government's official ban on cell phones in schools. It was a policy National promised to deliver during the election if it was elected into government. Prime Minister Christopher Luxon celebrated the day, posting "Happy no phones in school" to social media. From Friday, it's official, Luxon wrote. Phones have been banned in schools across the country. So is the phone ban affecting schools in New Zealand and what people think of the phone ban? I have asked kids, housemasters and headmasters at Christ College to see what their opinion is.
Up first, we have Tony Bukaski and what his opinion is on the phone ban.
I think the phone ban's pretty reasonable, but if I could change one thing, I would change it to where if you get your phone taken off you, instead of your parents going to pick it up, they could message the office, and then you could pick it up.
Tommy likes the phone ban, but he just wishes that he could get his parents to call the office so he can pick up his phone so he doesn't have to wait a couple of days. Now we have Alex Lascelles, Year 10 in Harper House, to see what he thinks of the phone ban at school.
My opinion on the phone ban is that we should be able to use them in morning tea and lunchtime in the house, so we encourage people to stay in the houses and not around in the tuck shop.
Alex likes the phone ban, but he just wishes that you could use them at morning tea and lunchtime so people stay in the house, and that means you can talk to more mates without losing them. And now we have Mr. Wynne, Executive Principal of Christ College, and his opinion on the Christ College phone ban.
I think the phone ban introduced by the government in schools that we've generally followed, even though we didn't have to, is in itself not a bad idea. We're trying to balance the use that young people have on their phones. We want phones to be a part of their lives. I'm sort of, I'm supportive to an extent, but I don't like prohibition as being a solution. They're not. They need to learn to live with phones, just like they need to learn to live with everything else in their life.
Mr. Wynne likes a phone ban. He thinks it's a good idea to encourage people to meet new people, and also means that people will engage more in class time and don't have the urge to go on their phone all the time. Now we have Mr. Wynne to see what he thinks of teenagers using social media.
Social media for young people can be an incredibly happy, enjoyable way of sharing and communicating and connecting, and it also can be evil and dark and difficult. Therefore, I'm worried about the dark side of it, and we need to ensure that social media is used constructively and positively. I'm very concerned because it's manipulated and managed by large corporate companies who are looking to make profit and impact. And we, the community, need to make sure that young people are aware of their obligations to each other to take care through social media channels and not use them inappropriately, because it's only there because we've got these mobile phones and mobile devices and computers that are have made our lives much, in so many ways much better organised and more effective.
Mr. Wynne thinks that teenagers in social media is okay when they have the good stuff, but when they turn into the bad stuff, that's when he does not like what goes down there. He also thinks that we can't do really much about it because of everyone has a cell phone, and that people will just always have social media, and there's not really much we can do about it unless the companies change up the rules and everything.
Good morning and welcome to my live stream discussion on this critical issue of climate change. My name is Ryland Wheeler and I'm excited to present to you today and explore this important topic that is impacting you and your children's world. Over the past few weeks, I've been conducting this piece. I've interviewed Mr. David Newton, Lewis Devine Smith, and Peter Beasley. Join me as I find out the answer to how rising sea levels impact coastal communities and infrastructure in New Zealand and how climate change is affecting New Zealand's ecosystems and biodiversity.
How will rising sea levels impact coastal communities and infrastructure in New Zealand?
Rising sea levels has been ignored up till very lately, and unfortunately they are a fact of young students at Christ College's life in the future. There is a very large glacier in Antarctica which is pegged, currently grounded on a bit of rock, that people have hoped was not going to melt from the bottom. It acts as a plug, and it's called the Armageddon or something similar glacier. And when it flows, it melts and it unleashes an enormous uphill flow of ice into the sea. And by itself, if it melts, it'll take 100 years to do so. But it has by itself the potential of lifting sea levels by 0.5 metre worldwide. This will obviously increase erosion right around our seashores. Cliffs will erode further back. There's an awful lot of infrastructure. Ports, by their very nature, import and export ways to get produce onto a ship. And if they have to be rebuilt or protected from a high tide, then it's an enormous cost to the whole of society. Christchurch itself is built on sand and rock, all alluvial, which will erode very easily. The first thing we'll see is a big storm and New Brighton will disappear. And on New Brighton there happen to be several thousand homes and they will go with it. This is already happening overseas in Florida. And so right around the coast of New Zealand, individual disasters, and they'll probably look at their local ratepayers and the central government. However, when it becomes really widespread, there will simply be no appetite to help people out. And they will have to stand on their own feet and take the loss. So a wise person would be moving before that happened, before you lost insurance, before you were unable to raise a mortgage, and retreating from your coastal real estate. There's a farmer down in Rakaia who is in the process of losing his frontage, land which is being encroached on by the sea, and he is absolutely having to walk away from it because no one else is going to help him. This is already happening, and it will continue to happen, and it'll become rapid once the insurance companies stop insuring coastal properties.
Here's what Lewis had to say.
Rising sea levels in New Zealand are causing lots of coastal erosion, and that can lead to the loss of beaches and cliffs and increased flooding from the higher tides and storm surges, and this could damage roads and homes.
Here's what Peter had to say.
I think rising sea levels will impact coastal communities and infrastructure in New Zealand quite significantly, because there are quite a few coastal cities that rely on the sea and have built their whole, city based on the current sea levels. If they increase, then pretty much a whole town's going to go underwater. And so I do think that they will impact coastal communities quite significantly, both economically and damage all of the infrastructure.
How is climate change affecting New Zealand's ecosystems and biodiversity?
I am 63 and I have seen in Christchurch in my lifetime a decrease in the number of frosts, a decrease in the number of snow events, and I've also seen an increase in the number of pests that in my own garden. We had an infestation of click bugs last season, and they had previously only been reported in Nelson. They are a North Island problem. They attacked our boysenberries. that pest didn't used to survive our winters, and therefore it was not prevalent in Canterbury. So one of the problems with climate change is that you have these previously contained pests invading further south, and they don't need to be only insect pests, they could be plant pests, but you also get a commensurate, so you get an added growth benefit. We have been able to grow passion fruit vines and fruit successfully in a property here in Christchurch. Previous to the last 3 years, they would have been frosted and we would not have got a fruit off them. So there are benefits to climate change as well as detriments. The balance, however, is probably a detriment in Canterbury because we are likely to see far longer and drier droughts, which won't be compensated for by bigger floods. The extreme weather events is one of the consequences of global climate change, and our infrastructure is not built for the 1 in 100 year flood happening every 3 years. We've seen that already in the last couple of years in a couple of major rain events called cyclones, which have come into the North Island. They shouldn't get this far south, but they are, and they will continue to do so.
Here's what Lewis had to say.
Climate change is impacting New Zealand's ecosystem by shifting their habitats. This could cause some species to decline or become extinct. Temperatures can change ecosystems by affecting the native plants and animals, and increased frequency of the extreme weathers like floods, droughts and storms will further stress the environment.
Here's what Peter had to say.
I think climate change is affecting New Zealand's ecosystems and biodiversity in quite a few ways, including particularly animals. Coastal animals get affected by the rising sea levels. Their habitats are destroyed, and the biodiversity therefore reduces.
My name is Archer Allen and I am a Year 10 student at Christ College. Today I am talking about if the phone ban in New Zealand is affecting schools. The second school term began on 29th of April, and so did the government's official ban on cell phones in schools. It was a policy National promised to deliver during the election if it was elected into government. Prime Minister Christopher Luxon celebrated the day, posting "Happy No Phones in Schools" to social media. From today, it's official. Phones have been banned in schools across the country. So is the phone ban in New Zealand really affecting schools?
I have asked kids and headmasters at Christ College, including Mr. Wynne, Black Nation and Bill Cross, to see what their opinion is about the phone ban, and if they could make changes, what would the changes be? I am now interviewing Bill Cross to see what his opinion on the phone ban is, and if he could change something to the phone ban, what would it be?
It's good to stop you going on some social media, but it can be a bit inconvenient when I'm just kind of want to listen to some music or watch some YouTube in the house. I think overall it's okay. I reckon it's alright. It doesn't affect me too much. I don't go on my phone too much. I mainly use my laptop, but I'm neutral on it. If I was going to change stuff about the phone ban, well, I think it's alright to use in the house. The no tech system. If there was a good enforcement on the no tech Tuesdays or Thursday system in the house, it could be good. It's having it sometimes in the house, or having it on lunch times but not on morning teas or something like that. But even now, there's not very good enforcement of the phone ban, so there's usually still some phone use in the house, so it doesn't really matter to me.
After this interview, Bill Cross thought that the phone ban was acceptable and that he enjoyed having the phone ban, but also didn't like getting told off if being on phones sometimes. I am now interviewing Blake Nation to see what his opinion on the phone ban is, and if he could change something to the phone ban, what would it be?
My opinion on the phone ban is I don't really care that much, but it is pretty funny just to see some other kids like cry over it. But it would also be better if we could go on our phones when we're in the house, like during morning tea and lunch. But it's fine that we can't go on it like during periods and like when we're out of the house. I reckon that's fine. I reckon a few rules in the phone ban should be changed, like how we should be allowed to go on it in the houses, but if there's like an event going on, we're not allowed to go on our phones, like during periods and stuff, we aren't allowed to, but if we're in the house, I reckon we should be able to.
Blake likes the phone ban as well, but would also want to make adjustments towards it, like having to be able to go on your phone at morning tea at lunchtime. Up next is Garth Wynn to see what his opinion on the phone ban is and whether it is affecting Christ College.
Well, the phone ban that's recently been introduced by the national government in schools, as I predicted, was much a political move as it was anything else. But there is pretty strong evidence at the moment that if we can make sure phones are used well by young people, then there's probably going to be a lessening of a range of different issues that are brought to young people through phones. So, it's an interesting thing. I'm not a great believer in prohibition. Prohibition meaning if you ban something, it doesn't mean that it's going to go away. But what I can see is monitoring, or at least lessening the use of mobile phones by young people in some part of their day through control is not a bad thing. It seems to be working pretty well around here. Given that phones are a part of modern life, I think rather than trying to reverse that reality by sort of banning phones, we need to address the issues that are going on inside the phones. And one of the most significant things is the idea that young people are being exposed to age-inappropriate material through the medium of their phone by providers of that material. So I would like to think that we've put much more pressure on the providers of material, the TikToks and the Instagrams and YouTube, to make sure that age-inappropriate material for young people cannot be delivered through the phone. So if we worked more on asking those providers to be more attentive to what is available to young people, then the fantastic tool that a mobile phone is for our lives to be organised and then could be used constructively without the damage that's being caused by use of inappropriate material and the way that phones are used. So I think there's a lot of balancing work that needs to go on and ahead in the next little while, and it's not all about banning things.
After all the interviews, the phone ban has produced mixed results. Positively, it has led to increased student engagement in activities and improved focus during lessons. Some students have been more socially interactive without their phones. However, the Ministry of Education found only marginal evidence that the phone ban significantly improved academic achievements, and some students initially struggled to adapt to the new rules. But after all of these interviews, all kids and students accept the phone ban. Schools also face practical challenges, and there are concerns that students might switch to other devices like smartwatches to bypass the rules. Overall, while the phone ban had some benefits, its overall effectiveness remains a topic of debate.
Morena, my name is William Butler. The political landscape of our world is changing. We're seeing the rise of minor parties within New Zealand as we become further fractured in our political beliefs. Last year's election, we saw National and Labour get a total of 65% of the votes, down from 2020's 75.6%, and then 2017's 81.3% of the vote. Despite this, many minor parties still don't get into Parliament. So why do they bother in the first place? Today, I will be interviewing the leader of the Animal Justice Party, Robert McNeil, and former leader of the Ngāti-registered Democracy NZ, Matt King. Political scientist James Ockey from the University of Canterbury has also provided statements. Member of the Legalised Cannabis Party, Michael Appleby, and leader of New Conservative, Helen Horton, both agreed to an interview, but then did not respond to emails past that point. Starting with Democracy NZ, which was deregistered after the last election. So who were they and why did they deregister?
Well, basically, I started a new political party based around the fact that I'm a believer in freedom of choice and freedom to choose. I left the National Party because I didn't think that they were representing a sizable chunk of New Zealand, referring to around the mandates with the vaccinations and COVID. So I formed a new party, Democracy NZ. We were hoping to get into Parliament on the winning a seat option, but we were unsuccessful. And so I decided that I would get out of politics altogether. And that's why I deregistered the party and left.
The other interviewee, Robert McNeil of the Animal Justice Party, only entered politics recently. So what led him to becoming the leader of the party?
Yeah, I co-founded it back in 2022, but the idea's been kicking around for a while before that. For me, I've been an animal activist for a number of years, both here and when I was living in Canada. Being active in the political field just seemed to make sense. There's really a hole in politics in New Zealand, and we wanted to fill it. The Australians have had great success, and we figured if the Aussies can do it, then the Kiwis should be able to as well.
Why do you bother when there's such a low chance of getting into Parliament?
Well, we only became registered about a month before the national election. That was when we got started. We certainly didn't have much success in the last election, but we didn't expect much, given that we only had a month, no money, and no time to build a following. Like a lot of minor parties, to some extent, it's about getting our ideas out there. The basic premise for the party in the short term was to take advantage of the $70,000 broadcasting allocation that the government gives us for free advertising for animal-related issues. That was the short-term justification. The longer-term justification was to build a structure that would be there if and when somebody with money and power or charisma comes along that wants to support animal issues. You have to start from somewhere.
We went around the country, William, and we spoke to thousands and thousands of people. I had more people at some of our meetings than sitting politicians, including the campaigning current Prime Minister. I came to Rangiora and I had filled the town hall. Our foundation of our party was on the basic right to choose, and we think that the mandates that came out around vaccinations were fundamentally wrong. I think what happened, William, was that people were so angry with the Labor government and what they'd done. They didn't want to risk putting their vote to smaller parties. They just wanted them out, so they voted for National and ACT.
When asked why fringe parties bother, political scientist James Ockey says that fringe parties are often issue-orientated. He says to take the Legalised Cannabis Party as an example. They were working to promote one issue and one policy. He says that in part due to their ability to focus some attention on the issue, we eventually got all the way to a referendum. He also says that in some cases, parties run the first time as a test to see if there might be an audience for their point of view. In such cases, Ockey says they may be planning to make a greater effort in the future. What do the large parties lack that fringe parties have?
A lot of it is issues-based for us. So there are other parties, such as the Greens, that on paper have pretty good policies for animals. The Greens have been in power for 2 terms, co-governance with Labor, and really not much has changed. We felt there was a need for a clear, uncompromising voice for animal issues that weren't kind of pushed to the sideline by the major parties. They act and speak in a different way because they know that we're there to to remind them that animals need support.
What's led you to leaving politics? Was it the experience you had through Democracy NZ or the National Party?
Well, it was both. It was the National Party and Democracy NZ, because what I found is that what the perception of politics and democracy and what the reality is two different things. When you think that you just have to vote, it's all fair and equitable and everyone lines up for the race and you have an equal chance, well, that's a big myth. It's not true at all. There's a lot of big money involved in politics and a lot of corruption and a lot of, in my view, dishonesty. We got infiltrated by very strong, staunch supporters of other parties that we didn't know were, and spreading mistruths about me and our motives and who was behind us. These candidates of ours, I've only known them for a matter of months, so they didn't know me personally, didn't know that it was rubbish, but they heard these stories and they started doubting what we were about, and that was deliberate and very clever by our opponents.
Is there an issue in our current system of government?
Oh goodness, there's so many issues. Although New Zealand is a better model in some countries with proportional representation, it's not as good as some others. The threshold to get into power is 5% of the National Party vote. That's quite high. In Australia, it's closer to 2%. They can manage to squeak in minor parties, and so there are more voices. There's issues with non-transparent lobbying and money in politics in New Zealand that's not monitored as well as it can be in other places. Lots and lots of issues. Personally, I think lowering the vote age to 16 would have been a good move, just because old folks, including perhaps myself, have messed things up so badly that the younger voices should be heard, and that was the recommendation of the Commission earlier in the year. We swing from blue to red and back to blue again, and it's like running from one side of the boat to the other, when really what we need is, if we've got any chance of improving things significantly, is cooperation and collaboration and hearing from different voices. So
the political system we've got is such that small parties don't have a chance. You have to get in by joining a big party. And I joined in politics as a national MP for Northland. I found that if you don't do what the leadership team of the party decide, then you very quickly have no career. I think the 5% threshold is too high. I think there's a lot of situations where we could have got some good people into Parliament with, say, 2 or 3%. And we would have been the better for it, but we will never know because they didn't get the 5%.
So the world overall is becoming more polarized politically. Some say this is causing more violence and less cooperation. Do you think this is true?
Yes, I definitely think we see polarization, not just in government, but in a lot of areas of society. It's unfortunate that when we need collaboration the most, we seem to have more and more polarization and looking at each other as enemies, versus actually, kind of maybe seeing the issues behind what's going on and trying to work towards positive change.
Political scientist James Ockey believes that political polarization poses a great danger to political systems, because if people are too polarized, he says, they may refuse to accept the decisions of democratic political institutions because they think they cannot afford to lose. In terms of fringe parties causing political polarization, Ockey says that this can happen, but for the most part he believes that fringe parties gain support when larger parties become too similar and at the same time too ineffective. Ockey says that fringe parties grow if people are unhappy with the way the increasingly similar large parties have performed. Ockey says it depends on the political context and the ideology of the fringe party. Thank you for listening.
Good morning. My name is Bruno Kearney, and I'm a Year 11 student at Christ College. For my investigative journalism project, I have investigated the value of the NCEA Level 1 curriculum. This is because recently there have been several schools in New Zealand who have decided to drop the NCEA Level 1 curriculum and replace it with a curriculum of their own. In this audio package, I will find out why by looking at 2 schools in Christchurch that offer different programs at the Year 11 level and finding out how much success they are having in their separate programs.